Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all. The fantastic view. I must say, I've lived in Auckland since 1996, and I've learnt more about the Gulf, which I love, this morning than I thought I would, and a lot of it's very scary. So that is amazing. As has been explained, I'm strategy director with Principles, and we are a brand agency, which I know to many people is an evil word. But what brand actually means is actually just what you stand for, what reputation is, what your story is. Whether you are a place, whether you are a bank, whether you are an airline. At the moment, I'm working with Kiwi Bank, Sampson, the Foundation for the Blind, part of MB, Tower Insurance, and firms you won't have heard of, to help define who they are, what their vision is, what they want to be, their organisational values. And I've also done a lot of work, as has my company, with place brands. And it's the same principles. If you are a place, an entity, you have a story to tell and you need to stand for something. And I've had the pleasure and the honour, thrill of working on Taranaki, Bay of Plenty, the mighty Waikato, and a recent project with Southland. And I wanted to share a couple of examples with you this morning, because what we're going to do at the end of today, after you've had a drink, something to eat, and a bit of celebration, around 6:20, I believe, is we're going to run an exercise to get you folk to help start drafting up what we think the vision and story for the marine park, the Hauraki Golf Marine Park, can be. Now, because there's so many of you, I'm not going to stand in front of you with a whiteboard and map it out, which is how we do it in a lot of workshops. We're actually going to split you into the groups you are on your tables and give you a big piece of paper. I'm going to get you guys to draft up some thoughts, and I'll show you a framework in a moment for how we're going to do that. The reason I'm standing here now is just to show you what we're going to do, so that during the day you can have a think and maybe get some ideas percolating. And then after this evening, I'm going to take away this plethora of great ideas and thoughts scribbled badly on big pieces of paper, and I'm going to try and help draft up a concise vision or story for what the vision of this great park is. So just quickly to show you what I mean by these words: strategy, story, brand, etc. And I've already said this, but you need to stand for something. And there are some great goals. There's 2 goals that have been talked about this morning, which will form a focus. But you need to put a stake in the ground, or in this case, obviously a stake in the water. And you need to actually articulate your story. And I've got brand there, but let's kick the word brand into touch, because I saw some of you nod your heads when I said it's a bad thing. As I say, it's just your reputation, who you are, what you stand for, and how that gets expressed. Now, 12 years ago, I had the thrill of working on a very challenging project to define the brand for Taranaki. Now, I'm a 6th generation kid from Waitara, so that was on one hand a great thrill, on the other hand a huge challenge, and it was a controversial project. But by going through a consultation process with stakeholder groups as big as this, and iwi, and everyone else, we came up with a vision and an articulation for Taranaki, which 99% people agreed with. It stood the test of time, and I have been told that the Taranaki brand is held up by NZTE as the gold standard of regional place branding in New Zealand still. But its heart was an idea. Now, a region like no other doesn't sound particularly differentiated, but no one else was saying, so we decided we would and put some meaning around it. And we developed what I call a strategy on a page. We are just focusing on the story today, but this shows you what a brand strategy on a page looks like. At its top is our brand purpose or our brand promise, Taranaki like no other. This was our positioning, what we were going to go out and try and get people to think about us. And we had some values, we had some, I won't go through this, but some personality. We had a bunch of key messages which are still flowing out through all sorts of communications for the province today. We had brand voice, which defines how you speak, but at its heart, we had a brand story. So, I'll read you Taranaki's brand story. So, Taranaki like no other. There's something about Taranaki, locals know, visitors feel it. A crucible in the forging of New Zealand's identity, its very existence originates from the legend of a lovelorn mountain banished to the rugged west coast to stand in proud isolation. Today, the region remains just far enough away turning a negative into a positive, both geographically and in spirit. Here the past is alive, you can feel it in the air. So is the future. Wild, yet excitingly cosmopolitan, this is the best of Heartland New Zealand coming of age. That was the story we developed after many sessions like this. We got consensus, and it's been the engine room for very, very successful marketing and communications for the region, and it's been very, very helpful in focusing the internal sense of pride that was there already. And as you may know, some pretty wild things have happened in Taranaki since the land war's on, and it's been quite a unifying mechanism. So we're hoping to develop a story to define the vision of the Gulf out of the great stuff that you'll give us later tonight, or today. And just quickly, actually I'll show you how Taranaki like no other was brought to life since we're here. This is a brand. This is called a logo. Brands are not logos, but we had one. And you can see there's a whole bunch of icons in there, 30 in total, because it's a very eclectic, diverse place, and everyone thinks they are Taranaki. New Plymouth District thinks it's Taranaki. South Taranaki thinks it's Taranaki. 8 of the 9 iwi think they're Taranaki, depending on who you talk to. But each of those things represented everyone in the province. And it was a very, I'll tell a wee story. When the brand launched, we were expecting controversy. The only controversy, after so much consultation and agreement around the story, was a letter to the editor by a man from the Alpine Association who said, "Dear Sir, why is the Alpine Association not represented in the new brand for Taranaki?" And the editor wrote back to him and said, "Dear Sir, I think you'll see there's a mountain in it." The story was expressed through advertising. This is half-page print ad out of the local newspaper when it launched. It was seen on billboards. 12 years later, it's still going strong. The council, schools, sports clubs, WOMAD, the Taranaki Festival of the Arts, co-branded. You know, there's potential down the track, potentially, for some of that to happen here. And just quickly, Southland, a project I worked on late last year where we did consultation, a lot of involvement from iwi again, and I won't go through their whole story, but I will read the last paragraph because you can have a bit of fun. You can be real, you can be colloquial. We're a welcoming, generous lot, down to earth, unapologetically proud, and focused on an exciting future. We could go on, but the long and short of it is that the door's always open, the jug's always on, and we can't wait to show you around. Go south. And that's actually just starting to be used. Apparently, Air New Zealand have used the put the jug on bit in a campaign recently. Out of the themes that came out of the workshops we did with Southland people, we pulled out things like we make big things happen, we live on the edge, we're down to earth, we choose more time, we are Southern hospitality. Those are all expressed in that story. And I'm hoping that out of what we do at the end of today, we'll get some great themes and ideas from you folk and about how you can contribute. And there will also be a little piece at the end where we ask you to actually put your money where your mouth is and write on a sheet of paper what you're going to do over the next year to do your bit for this great, great cause. So, when we get to this part of the day at 6:20, you're going to have some sheets on your table, they're not there now, and we're going to ask you as groups to do one of two things. There's two ways we can articulate and frame up the story. And it won't be grammatically perfect, it won't be copywriting, it's just getting your group's ideas down, and then one of you will stand up and read it to you. We won't get every table in the time, but we're hoping to get quite a few of you. And this is the first version, referencing the two big goals, at least 20% of the water's protected and 1,000 square kilometres of shellfish beds and reefs restored. This is what we call a logline structure for developing a draft story. And in this case, this is your group's perspective. The Hauraki Golf Marine Park is, so you define what it is, for, who's it for? Its reason for being is, sentence. This will be made possible by who, what, how, where, whatever you think needs to be going there. So the following outcomes will be achieved. Proof points, 1, 2, 3. So that's one way you can frame up your story. And as I think you could imagine, there'll be a bit of debate across your table about wordage and phrasing and what should go in there. But that's why we're telling you about this now. So at the end of the day, you'll actually have a bit of stuff to throw on the table immediately. The second approach is not taking your group's perspective, but writing the story from the park's perspective. Okay? In this case, as the Hauraki Golf Marine Park, I am for my reason for being. You can see it follows the same pattern. This is or will be helped and made possible by, so we can achieve the following outcomes together. So this is writing it from the park's perspective. So those are the two ways we're going to get you to approach the story. You won't see me again until 6:20, but hopefully by then you'll have all sorts of ideas bubbling away, and I look forward to hearing what you come up with. Thank you very much.